And we're up. Today, we have got the very source of my whole business. They don't always realize this or own it, but this group of people right here are the reason that all of the mastermind programs exist. They're the ones that went first. They're the trailblazers, the guys that went, yeah, we'll give it a go. And 5 years on, magic happened. And we're going to tell you all about that today. And Tanya, who is on a different part of the journey, who I've also known for years, who those of you who listened to these podcasts before will have heard her introducing and interviewing Igloo, is going to interview all of us about the last 5 years and what's happened and how these miraculous people have trailblazed for many, many more that are coming behind them. So I'm going to hand over to Tanya and say thank you for facilitating this chat, and I leave it to you to ask any questions you want, no hold bars, warts and all, go where you like.
Well, thank you very much, and it's an absolute honor to be here. As those that know me, I'm very much an inquisitive and curious person. I like to know the story behind a brand, a project, or a venture. So Alex kindly asked me to host this, I think it's the next hour and a half of a live broadcast.
Hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yes, however long it flows and however long you have the stamina to answer all my questions. But, you know, without getting too deep into it, why don't each of you individually introduce yourselves, tell me who you are, where you're from, and how you got together with this group. Do you want to start, Grant?
I was waiting to jump in, yeah. So I'm Grant Zetmeyer. I'm based in Penarth, just outside Cardiff, and I think I met every one of you, bar Tanya, who I do know as well, through BNI, so business networking, some 12, maybe 13 years ago now. And I guess I'd known what Alex was up to for 10 years prior to this journey, and I was always interested in what she was doing. And at some point she said, you should maybe come along and have a look at what I'm up to. I was interested in property and finance, and actually how to, I guess, better what I was doing, because I was doing okay with one property, but not really getting any traction, not really moving it forward, not really kind of generating wealth from it. It was just a small amount of passive income, and I thought, yeah, that sounds cool, I'll go along. And here we are.
That's brilliant, Grant. I suppose it would be really important if Alex could give us a bit of background about, you know, what it is you do, Alex, and how you bring remarkable individuals together to help them become financially independent.
I think what there is to say is I've been told this by the community, I hoodwink people with financial freedom and money, and then I make them deal with the rest of their lives and, joint venture together and build stuff together and work on their dreams. So what I talk about is financial freedom and money, and what we actually do is take on our whole lives and create dreams and dreams beyond the dreams and all the rest of it. So what I'm really interested in is people and holding people together and facilitating people. But ultimately, why people come and work with me in the first place and why these guys did was because I put together a program called Money Bootcamp after realizing, working one-to-one with a lot of people, that the thing that was missing was their money wasn't right and there was stuff in their lives that wasn't working. And if you try and build a property portfolio on top of that, it's like building a house on a foundation of sand, to use a really cheesy analogy. And it just doesn't work, and it'll collapse at some point. So I put together the Money Bootcamp program, which a coach later told me was the name of a program, someone far more famous than me, and maybe I should change it to Money Mastermind, which is what it's now called. So these guys were the first. They were the first guys who came to work with me over 4 months, and also then said, what's next? And I said, nothing, I don't know. And these were the guys, especially Grant, actually, who said, come on, I want to keep coming to your house once a month. I thought it was just because I cooked nice food, because I used to be a chef and they just wanted to eat nice food once a month. But apparently it was more than that. And that linked back to when I was living in London a long time ago, and I played the Robert Kiyosaki cash flow game. And the coach that was getting us to play it got us to joint venture our way out of the game. And back then, way back in the dark, distant pits of my memory, I remembered joint venturing, getting out of the game really fast. So it's kind of like the game of life, and you get out of the proverbial rat race. And thinking at the time, oh my God, what would it be like if people did this in real life? And then I went, no one would ever do it. No one would ever trust each other. It would be way too complicated. It's a dumbass idea, Alex. You're just playing a game. Go back to your life. And forgot all about it. And I forgot all about it for years. And then even when all of these guys, and especially Grant, were saying, come on, what else can we do? It took a few months for it to kind of percolate through and sort of go, oh, would these guys be the ones that would give it a go? And I went, and I can't remember exactly how it was. This is kind of me sort of paraphrasing the story, but in my memory, how it happened was I kind of went back to them and went, got this idea, do you want to give it a go? Whilst, you know, kind of realizing that individually, and they can all, you know, say it for themselves, individually, there was like this lack of traction. So kind of like what Grant was saying, he had one buy-to-let property, you know, had a business. There was nothing wrong. There was nothing financially wrong, but just wasn't getting to the next level. So actually going back to them going, got this crazy ass idea that if you guys pull together and joint venture and build a company, you'll get more traction. So you pull resources. And these guys were these guys plus Sam, who's not here now. So shout out to Sam Beecham, who's very much part of this story and this journey, massively so. They said yes. And then I went, oh, fuck. Okay, let's do this. And then we all worked it out together. And that's really why I say they're literally the trailblazers, the people that kind of instigated the whole thing. And then these guys built a limited company and I facilitated their further on journey.
Yeah, brilliant. It's good to just clarify that, because obviously now you've, 5 years later, you've got more and more groups coming together like this. And those are stories that through these live podcasts, you'll be able to take us on that journey. So Luther, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Luther. I have a wall and floor tiling business, which is my main source of income at present. And then obviously I met up with these guys, similar story to Grant, although I joined BNI very briefly, but at some point later. And I think that's how I then got into the money boot camp, because I realized there was a bit of play with my money that probably wasn't very effective. I think I ended up I had a rental property that was empty for about 8 months. I just did nothing with it. So yeah, there was lots of need for sort of getting on and focusing. And I thought, well, yeah, this is a great idea. Pooling together in terms of with other like-minded individuals that want to put their money together and actually do something with it rather than just sit on it and hope that something happens, because nothing happens if you do that. And over the last sort of, I forget the number of years we've been doing this in terms of
5 years.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of going back from the money, like even back to the BNI point of in chronological order, it's difficult to sort of piece it all together. But obviously, where we've got to now is an amazing point. I don't think if I'd have gone back and looked forward to where I'm at now, I'd have been able to go, oh yeah, that's where I'll be in 5-6 years time. So yeah, in terms of the business, not only helped as a group grow with the property side of things, but it also helped grow my own business and focus on the bits that were working and the bits that weren't working, taking those out. I've got a wife and a son, and a couple of hobbies. Apart from that,
share your hobbies, Luther. It's really powerful for everyone listening to hear the different people that you guys all are, and that how together it really works because you're so different. So
I've recently taken up golf. Pretty bad at it at the moment, but it's a great social activity, and it's really enjoyable just to be out and about and socializing from an outside of work perspective. I'm very much sort of driven, and when I'm in work, I'm always in work mode. So to be out and actually sort of play golf with others, which technically from a work surrounding is actually quite nice, just to sort of be out of it. Other hobbies, I enjoy sort of playing poker in the background, but it takes up a lot of time at the moment. So it's something I'd like to do moving down in the future, because you'll be playing 18, 27 hours over 3 days. So it takes up a lot of time and energy. Building Lego is one of my other hobbies. It's a costly one, but I do enjoy doing that with some of my spare time. I think that covers most of them.
Can I just ask, you still on the auction? So what everyone needs to know about Luther is that the poker/gambling side of him is why we love him so much. And sometimes why he drives us nuts. But so he came on going, I'm actually on an auction now. What are you bidding for? And did you win it, or is it still going? Because that's
it's going to run throughout this podcast, and that was a sort of a concern of mine. Sort of how do I sort of split my attention without not my attention? Yeah, it's sundry like some items that we might potentially use on some of the property refurbs we're doing, and a lot of the stuff that I'll use within my business that's currently at a decent rate. But like everything at the moment, everything's sort of going up. People are spending a lot more. So just checking against prices of what they're worth and then going, actually to save 10% to have all this, probably not worth it. But if it's 30, 40%, it's something worth getting. I know I'll use it eventually, which is what everyone said when I bought 4 printers. Which I bought.
Make money on those in the end?
I made money off the first sale, so it paid for all of them in the first sale, and then I've sold 2 since, and I've got 1 left. So if anyone's in the need for a printer,
if anyone's listening and wants a printer, Luther's your man. He's got one kicking around his workshop.
I've got one. It's 650 quid plus VAT. Plus then the maintenance costs, which I can set you up with a brilliant printer person who will service all your needs.
No, but it's great, and this is the dynamics that we'll get into in more depth about the the weaving between your personal finances, your business planning, and then obviously these projects in property that you find the time for, because we've all got the same 24 hours. And I think these are some of the lessons that, people that I've talked to in the past, is that I don't have time to work on any properties or, so that those are key points that I really want to return to, if that's all right. Brilliant. Thank you. Lovely to find out a little bit more about you, Luther. What about you, Sabrina?
Yeah, hi. So I'm a personal trainer, powerlifter, accountant. I think that's pretty much it. I'm 33. I've got a husband. What's that?
And a new mum.
Yes, and a new mum. I was just about to say I've got a little 5-week-old baby. Yeah. So I met these guys through BNI probably about 9 years ago now, when I was a new personal trainer. And heard Alexlouise come and do like a 60-second presentation at one of our meetings about being financially free and how she got financially free at 32. And I kind of convinced myself that I'm lazy and I don't like to work, but in reality, I'm a bit of a work addict, as you can probably tell from about 3 jobs. And yeah, I thought I really liked the idea of like, oh yeah, I don't have to work ever again. I could get passive income, and thought that it's something that I really want to kind of find out more about. So ended up going to Money Boot Camp, and I think, well, something to share, I was struggling at the time financially, had a lot of debt, struggling to put petrol in the car to go to work, that kind of thing. And that was 6 years ago now. And I think my personal income, this is nothing to do with the properties or anything like that, it's more than doubled, probably almost tripled since starting. So I've personally found it really, really valuable. Yeah, so
juggling a lot, but achieving, if not more. So that's
Sabrina's very modest. So when she says she has a 5-week-old baby, he was premature, right?
He was 11 weeks premature, yeah.
And I have to share that. I think I think everyone actually is really modest who works with me. What these guys do to get where they've got, like, it was really interesting, Tanya, because you said we've all got 24 hours. And I think these guys are a really good example of we've all got 24 hours and what's possible is amazing. And it's all about choice. It really is. People listening to this, if you're spending a couple of hours a night watching telly, this is what's possible if you stop doing that. I don't know if any of these guys ever watch telly. I know I don't have much time.
Does that mean I've got to stop watching TV as well?
It's just powerful what can be done with focus and intention and teamwork. And these guys literally do have the same 24 hours, and what they've all come through and deal with. You know, even now, you know, Serena's got a 5-week-old, and who she is she'll come on this because this has been booked for a few months, and she'll find a way. And it's about the way that these guys be that is why they've got what they've got. It's because Sabrina does what she said she's going to do, no matter the circumstances. And Sabrina, you've got some pretty big circumstances right now that you could, you know, cancel everything.
Oh yeah, it was
Sabrina's
tempting.
also my PT. So I literally had about 4 weeks off, right? Maybe 5. And she messaged me 2 weeks ago. So the baby's 3 weeks old, saying, right, come on, PT's back on. And I'm like, Jesus, really? I was kind of enjoying the rest. Okay, come on, let's do this. And it's about the way we be about life that makes the difference. And these guys, the way they be about life is they take it on. So it's really important to share that, because they're all very modest when they say what they deal with. And Sabrina, you were working pretty much full time as a PT whilst training as a bookkeeper and an accountant, and transitioning into that because you realized how much you loved it, whilst also then being pregnant and dealing with having a premature baby. It's, you know, it's just what is possible and how resilient human beings are is a story that's not told enough. So if you're listening to this thinking, oh, you know, it's all right for them, but I don't have time, give it up. Anything's possible. Thanks, Sabrina.
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. It's very insightful. And again, we'll come back to some of the things there from, you know, the perspective of a female as well, in what I suppose a few years ago was a very male-dominated industry. And I think it's really interesting, even from a, you know, the trades people element to even going into buying property and having the confidence, even though that, you know, you're multitasking and running lots of things behind the scenes. So you know, it's good to see a balance, isn't it, of men and women in these groups. So last but not least, John, you know, let's hear about what your story is.
Yeah, so as already alluded to, we all met through BNI. I think I met Alex when she came back for the second time, because you'd been in BNI, and that's how you knew Grant from before.
Yeah.
We were doing supper clubs. And I was actually working at an IT company back then. Liked the idea of money boot camp. I'd done T. Harv Eker. I've done some Robert Kawasaki stuff beforehand, but never actually carried it through and run with it. And yeah, it was Grant going, what's next after we finished Money Boot Camp, or Money Mastermind.
It was boot camp then, but yeah, we dropped it from sharpish.
Yeah, and I had an accidental property that I rented out, and it was just there renting out on its own, doing nothing else with it, and always liked the idea of property. But yeah, as everybody else has said, we don't actually do a lot of property. There's a lot of other stuff to build the platform on first before we get to being where we've been. So I've transitioned from being in IT. I always enjoyed running anyway, hence why I'm down as a owner of Off the Tarmac. But I didn't create Off the Tarmac until after we started working together as a group. And then since 2019, I've taken on the role of, and I've built the company with the support of these guys to help with property management and maintenance, because that's the role I fulfilled when we were doing a joint venture on a refurb in Newport back in 2019. So it's transformed my life into terms of what it was. It wasn't enjoying IT back then. I enjoy the work that we do now. Both sides of it. It is tough. It has been tough. We've got 4 kids plus 2 stepchildren, all girls.
That was a really good way of not saying I've got 6 kids, because actually just own it, John. You've got 6 kids, and that's what you deal with day to day. And how old is the oldest? So we have any number
of. So we have the youngest is 2 in January, and then the oldest. So I have twin girls, and then my partner has a 10-year-old. So my twins are 10. And then we've got a 3-year-old that's first full day in school today due to the Queen's funeral yesterday. So So there's either 2, 4, or 6 of us here, or any number in between, depending on what day it is.
Anyone
Yeah.
using kids as an excuse to not do your dreams, give it up. John's here to tell you it's possible.
Yeah. And they come with me. They like looking at the properties that we do. They like having a look around at the end of the refurbs we've done on some of the HMOs and Stowe Park. They all loved it. It's a little adventure for them. But yeah, no, there's always time.
Yeah, and that's
Can
the
I
biggest
just add
lesson, I
in?
think.
Can I just add in? Because again, these guys are incredibly modest. There's a couple of things that they've just sort of jumped over, like, because that's just what they do. When John says he's a runner, he runs ultra marathons, not like goes for a run around the park in the evening. Ultra marathons, John.
I don't run ultras every day. I do run around the park sometimes for a couple of miles.
The truth get in the way of good story. Let's have people imagine you run 100 miles a day. So you do that, and off the tarmac also arranges events from like 5K, but then the way up, right? So you actually deal with helping people who want to start running, but also, you'll arrange big events.
Yeah, pre-lockdown we did F all to 5K. So, and that was for people that weren't running or that had a break and wanted to get back into it. And then we did a 5 to 10K faster. We coached a couple of people. So some of our friends we run with, we've helped them complete ultramarathons. We put an ultramarathon on. But again, that only happened since 2018, I think it was. So after we formed, it was something that I decided to do and enrolled Joni in it. Actually, literally said, "You're a doctor now, so let's do this." and it's grown from there. So yeah. So
it's brilliant.
We just want people to be out in nature and being outdoors and getting that release and de-stress and feel much better about themselves. So you can even walk. Doesn't mean running for me. So.
There's one thing that I'm picking up from all of this as well. Sorry, Alex. Is that
I was just to say about Grant as well and his community.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go on to. So
brilliant.
Right, this is where the interviewer has to tell the coach. You talk, I'll ask the question.
Oh, shut up now.
She's so funny because when we're on the courses, she's like, any of you coaches that are in this group, rein it in. So back right at you, Alex. No, it was important. I did notice, Grant. This is what I'm finding from all of the interviews I'm running is that there is a huge sense of community. And I think that's important for the viewers and the listeners to understand is that it's very welcoming and friendly, and the friendships that you build, whether when you're a small group, a big group, is I don't know. It's just one of those places where you feel that you can come to and not feel that you've got to be someone you're not. Because I think we've all got this, well, some of us, majority of us have got a very complicated relationship with finance and money. And this is certainly a community that is thriving. And going back to it, because Grant didn't mention, he's just running a tiny little tribe of people, really, that's not making much difference, is it, Grant? Do you want to say just, what a legend you've been recently with what you do?
He's rubbish at saying what a legend he's been.
No.
I guess who knew that I guess team and teamwork and creating accountability would work. Firstly, Alex, and I remember the phone call. So I remember you phoning up and going, "I've got an idea." It was absolutely that light bulb moment, and I think you just picked the phone up. So thank you for that. Yeah, I get so. I have a day job which is a sign company, and I wanted to create something that came out of coaching with Alex and journey on a platform called Landmark was freedom of self-expression, and I wanted to create a festival, and that festival ended up almost being called Pipe Dream Festival because it was my pipe dream. And then coronavirus and lockdown happened, and I started getting in the sea, and that turned into something daily for me, and then a substitution for some less positive things I was doing. So maybe alcoholism and drug dependency, that just really a kind of one way of getting out of your head, I guess. And I'd say that really specifically, that you can get out of your mind or getting out of your own way. And I started getting in the sea daily, and that has snowballed into a fairly large community and a daily practice and a daily habit that it supports me, and it supports quite a lot of other people. And it's a fabulous way to wake up.
Yeah, what's the name of the community?
Dawnstalkers. So we're
and it's not
Penarth
only
every day at sunrise and spreading a little bit, spreading the message.
Yeah,
hopefully across the globe, but we're waiting for global domination.
Yeah, but it was like what Luther said, isn't it? Whatever you've learned within these group sessions over the years has, helped you as an individual, and probably your friendships and your relationships and your businesses. And so it's not just about, the end goal of this is where I want to be at this age, whichever way you do it. So, a great combination of characters, real dynamic personalities. And I think that again reflects in, the way that team work can evolve regardless of your background, your genre, your hobbies, where you live. So again, that's, I think, a real strong message for anybody tuning in to today and listening in future. Do you want to tell us a bit about what SSLGJ stands for and why that name?
We were at Alex's and obviously setting the company up, and we were going around all different ideas and names and everything else. And I just went, it's just use our initials. So it was Sam, Sabrina, Luther, Grant, and John. I was like, it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It's not like it's McDonald's or some funky trendy brand, because we were just having a couple of properties, right? That's what we looked at the time. No fancy names to link property into it. It was just, well, these are our names. Let's just use the initials and go with that. That's as much as it was.
Also, I think there's a bit. Yeah, it's
right?
simple. And there was the bit about The Apprentice where you always see on the TV show where they fight over a name and spend most of their allotted time to set it up over the name and then fail horrendously. So there was a bit of that. But on the flip side of it, it's the worst name ever to describe to anyone, because everyone has to ask how to spell it. You have to do the initials.
It's quite the tongue twister, isn't it?
And
we have. There's a guy that knows us. He calls it the boy band. He said, when you go to boy band practice, I say, I'm away with SSLJ this week. He's like, oh, boy band practice again and stuff like that. It's all got loads of different connotations because nobody can say it, but it's unique to us. It is us. So
yeah, and that's what matters. So what was its mission way back? Where do you want to talk about the starting point where you formed as a group and why you 5 people, even though one of you's missing at the moment?
We showed up. I think that's it. We showed up.
Yeah. We came to Money Boot Camp, didn't we? And I think same as you, Grant, I remember getting that phone call from Alexlouise. It was like, I've had this idea, like, I want to do this. Do you want to give it a go? And I just said yes straight away, carrying on with you guys. And I was all up for it, just jumping in and giving it a go. And I think that's just, we all had the same kind of attitude of, let's just see where this goes. We'd all enjoyed working with each other on Money Boot Camp and getting to know each other and forming deeper relationships as well through that, because although we'd known each other through BNI, I don't think it was like superficial business relationship, that kind of thing. And we just, the thing of BNI is know, like, and trust each other in order to do business. And I think we had that foundation of knowing, like, and trusting each other. So I think the initial goal was just to set up a few properties, get a few properties going, and that was pretty much it, and see where it went.
Okay, that's really key, because this is sometimes where people get a bit, it's not for me, because even that statement, we just thought we'd just get a few properties together. That even in a statement, it's quite scary. How do you just get a few properties together? So can you, for, you know, taking us back to the basics and the foundations of this, explain how a group like yourselves does something like that?
One step
Luther
at a
or
time. I
John?
don't.
I was just going to say, I mean, start looking at it. It's difficult. The more things I keep doing now that I would before have looked at going, I can't do that. There's no way I can do that. It's not possible. It's not. I can't do it. The amount of things that in the last sort of 5 years that I've done that 5 years ago I would have said just weren't achievable. It's just how much you put on it as it being a difficulty. And yes, you know, don't get me wrong, you know, some of us, we already had houses in the background, so putting some of them together, but then it's all the bits that you just don't know. But when you're working with other people that have also got that drive and that urgency to do it, it pushes you along. So that you've got that sort of someone behind you. You know, fundamentally, if you think, oh, I've got this money, I'm going to buy a house, or I want to buy a house, and then life happens and life continues, and then no one's there to sort of, come on, are we buying that house? Are we doing it? Are we going for this? I mean, you know, I think our first auction that we went to when it was the five of us, there was still a lot of resistance to be like, oh, should we bid? We had a property, we had a value, we had where we were going to go with, and then we didn't. I think we put a bid in when it was really low, and then, if I remember rightly, and then we just went, oh, couldn't get consensus, and we backed out. So it wasn't all straightforward and easy when we had our first property at auction, and that's where I think, you know, you're stepping into it. So yeah, when the guys are mentioning the stuff they're doing in the background, saying they're being and you guys are picking up not being they're being very modest. This is because it becomes a normal activity. It's no longer deemed as this big challenging ceiling to look at, and you're just in it.
Yeah,
I think we've got big challenging ceilings right now. I mean, we painted quite a rosy picture, but we're probably the most in debt we've ever been at any point, and we might be on the kind of cusp of the best deal we've ever done. But it's also massively scary.
Yeah,
the figures are eye-watering, and
that was the same, right? From back in, you know, Luther said, right, we went to a couple of auctions, we did our figures. We didn't even get to our max figure that we were going to go to. We just didn't bid. We just stopped, and we're like, oh. And Luther saying about the property that he had as well. I remember him asking, he was like, oh, we'll get it sorted. Come and clean the property for me. He was still building in there, not cleaning. I didn't have to clean it. I think clean all his tools. He still hadn't finished tiling. It
wasn't 8 months empty either. I think it was a little longer.
Yeah, it was more like 2 years, I think.
Just to throw you under the bus.
The other thing I wanted to say is it took us almost a year to get to auction, didn't it? Like, to even think about getting our first one. So
yeah, you know, these things are the nitty-gritty important bits, because we're trying to talk to people who are absolutely, you know, in the dark with all of this. It's that next step that, you know, and that going forward and then feeling overwhelmed. And so it's almost like, I suppose we've got to take you back 5 years and go, what was a typical day in the life of you guys? And then come to today and go, a typical day in the life today, you know, so that we've got this transition. And because, you know, it's even the journey, we sometimes forget how we get where we get. And it's always the good stuff that we remember. We're not really carrying the pain of, because we'd never move forward, would we? So I don't know how you can go back and say about
I was going to say, we started off, so Alex had said to us, and part of Money Bootcamp is like savings and building up savings pots and things like that. And we started off putting in £50 a month to save up some money for investing. And I remember having a conversation at Alexlouise's for putting it up one day, and we were all like so resistant to increasing from £50 a month of savings, because we were just like, wow.
And £50 a month was hard, right? Like £50 a month back then was like, no, that's a lot of money. Like that was a big deal in the beginning.
Yeah,
That's interesting. So, Karen, that this is what we want to hear is
Mm.
from that stepping stone. What happened next?
So yeah, Alex, carry on. Sorry.
Well, I was going to just say, I can't
Alex,
remember the
tell us
figures. I
through
think
that.
if you talk about this journey in terms of the property value, what it felt like getting that money together. So like now, back then you were saving 50. What was the property value? How much did it cost to do it up? What's it valued now? And what is it? And then actually, if you guys talk through the next deals and then the deal that you're doing now and how much you're saving now, I think people will get an idea of the difference because of the figures will help you.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we were, as I said, we were saving £50 a month and struggling with that, the concept of that. And then we went to auction and we eventually went to auction and bought a 2-bed house in, I've forgotten where it is now.
Pentra.
Park.
Pentra.
Pentra.
And I think it cost about 44,000.
And how did you get the 40 grand together?
Luther put money in
From the sale of his other
from the
house,
sale of his other house. Yeah.
which had so many connotations and so much wrangling and so many people feeling it wasn't fair that Luther was doing it for Luther when Luther's happy to put the money in. And I think we spent about 2 or 3 sessions on it, Luther's saying I put the money in, like Sabrina and Grant were like, no, that's not right, you shouldn't be doing it. And it's like,
And when you say a session, that's a full day's
6
coaching.
hours.
These were painful, nasty, horrible, really
Yeah.
exciting days. Thanks, Alex.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it took a lot for us to be okay with like this kind of imbalance of Luther putting money in and then, we had nothing to contribute, essentially. That's how we had it, the rest of us. So yeah, we bought this house, 44,000. We spent 13,000 doing it up. And then it valued up at 75,000. So I think we made about 12,000 on it. So yeah.
it rented out for $350 at the time, was it? Or
$350 a month. Yeah.
And what was the dynamic between the group? Who was responsible for what?
We all went to strip it out.
Yeah.
And then Luther arranged people to do it back up, basically, because he was in the trade. And he was the only one in the trade at that time, having the tiling business. So he used guys that he knew and dealt with at the time to go and get it sorted, and then rented back out through Diet Landlords Lettings.
I remember that it overran by like 3 or 4 weeks or something like that.
So it
We had
overran
a
in
certain
time
date
and
to
money.
finish. Yeah.
What was your original plan for spending on it? I remember like 5 or 8.
Yeah, $8,000
8
originally.
grand.
It's
Yeah.
like, that's like nearly double what the plan was. I think all of that stuff's important to really know. And remember, at the time, you guys, 50 quid a month was a lot of money. And all of a sudden it was going to be 8 and then it's 13 and it's like,
And just to note what we ended up doing in there as well is there was a full gut in terms of everything came out, new bathroom, new kitchen, there was a rewire, carpeting, repaint, and then like the garden had lots of different membranes put down over time, and stones, and there was a fence put up at the back. So it wasn't just a case of, we just did a few touch-ups. So it was a full gut back then.
So you've obviously learned a lot about that dynamic of taking on a property that needs a full refurbishment. I mean, those that weren't in the trade. So then the next stepping stone, you rented that property, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we
you
still own it.
got
We
still
still
own
own
it.
it. We still rent it. Yeah.
yeah. So you got a mortgage on it as well, which pulled most of the money back out. So the profit that they made actually stayed in effectively as the deposit.
And I think it's been rented ever since, with maybe like 1 month gap,
Yeah.
maybe not even that.
In our rents for 525 a month, doesn't it?
And it's valued up. We just had a remortgage, didn't we? So it's valued up at, I can't remember.
95,000, I think it was.
95,000.
Yeah.
So it's a good springboard then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think while we were doing that, at that point, then we were moving. Did that happen before or after? Whilst we were moving our own personal properties that we had, I think there was
And I think
the business.
the thing to say is that actually getting that first property is where we lost Sam. Before we even got that first property, that was how much of a struggle it was, I think, to get there, is that Sam ended up leaving us, leaving the company.
And I think there's something to say there about, like, we're all still really good friends. There was nothing wrong. It wasn't like, oh, Sam's left. It was like, it wasn't working for anybody. It wasn't working for Sam. And then because it wasn't working for Sam, it wasn't working for these guys. And what happened once Sam and everyone had kind of made that decision was that actually then you could get you actually then bought something fairly quickly. And what there is for me to say as a coach and for anyone listening is that it's when the rubber hits the road, the proverbial road, that shit gets real. So up until that point, everyone was, everyone was fine, everyone was in. And there's something about actually doing it, the going to auction, the, oh my God, this is real, and at that point, you'd signed the shareholders agreement. So that's another rubber hits the road moment that often people go, actually, do you know what? This isn't for me. There's something about it getting really real when it really challenges us as human beings as to whether we're going to do it or not. And again, nothing wrong because we don't know till we try. And the fact that Sam did it and she's gone on a whole different journey and done money in a different way and does investments in a completely different way. And it did what it needed for her and it did what it needed for these guys. So, we never know until we try something. That's the thing. And most people take themselves out of the game before they even try it. And what's great about these guys and about Sam is that they played the game and then they learned about themselves, about what they wanted to do and not do. They didn't take themselves out of the game before even trying, going, oh no, this just isn't for me. They were brave and courageous enough to give it a go and to go, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm not really sure. And saving is a lot to me. I'm going to give it a go. And I will be eternally grateful to you guys for trusting me to facilitate that, because what it took, the guts it takes to give it a go is massive. And anyone listening to this, thinking about starting a business or thinking about going on a course or thinking about trying something new, that there's something inside of you that you just know that that's what you want to do, just give it a bloody go. Because that's what actually made the difference for these guys. They didn't necessarily have all the answers. They didn't really know what was going to happen. They just gave it a go. And that's the thing for everybody at any stage, including where they're at now, which we'll get to in a bit, that they're still just giving it a go on the next level. Because once you smash through one glass ceiling, guess what, folks? There's another one and another one and another one. And the same for me. There's glass ceilings for me.
To add to that, Alex, is that having team and teamwork is super important, because not everyone's in the same place at the same time in terms of feeling about something. So having people to bounce off and the person who's in most fear, there's someone else to balance that off against. Also having a facilitator, whether it's Alexlouise or someone else, but having someone who's a sounding board and impartial. We wouldn't be together if it wasn't for that mechanism. We wouldn't have joined in the first place, but I don't think we'd still be operating had we not had that opportunity. And whether we created it for ourselves or whether you gave us the opportunity, that was super important.
Yeah, because we had that breakdown, right? I was away for Joni's birthday. It was August. I think it was just after we bought Carton Street in Pentra. And Luther and Grant were arguing with each other. Neither of them wanted to do it anymore. And it was like, oh my God. It was a Saturday, and I remember having a call on the Tuesday then, because Alex, you said you guys can facilitate it. Well, me and Sabrina should facilitate the call to find out and come to a resolution with it. And yeah, even back then, we've had disagreements, arguments, the different ways of being and different things to have a breakdown and to move forward. And we still have them. We have them last week, the week before. It's still there. It's just a different level of what we had to deal with at the beginning. We all know each other a lot more. We've done social stuff with the families together. There's more of a bond, the community within ourselves here. And those breakdowns still happen even 5 years in, but it's easier to deal with, easier to manage. And we still want what we want, and we still want to continue this journey, whatever the next deal is after what we're currently sitting on.
Tanya asked about goals as well, actually, because we haven't said what was our goal in.
Yeah.
So our 5-year goal in year one was, Sabrina, I'm looking at you,
was £10,000 a month profit. So £2,000 each profit. so to cover our expenses, passive income. That was our financial freedom figure.
And 10 properties, wasn't it, within the 5 years? 10 properties within the 5 years.
Yeah.
And then to buy a house abroad because we all wanted the fun. I think, Tanya, you mentioned earlier the mission, and we had a lot of work on our values at the beginning to go with it. We wanted to have fun, and we wanted to Grant liked skiing. We also would go and things like that. And it was all, I love the outdoors. And we did a couple of sessions on what our values were, what we wanted to achieve, and how we did it, or how we thought we could do it.
Yeah, because money is just a small part of it, isn't it? I think this is what's really quite remarkable about the courses that Alex runs, is that you think you're going in to learn about your relationship with finance, and then there's a few elements and dynamics of the whole 360 degree of your life that comes into play. And I suppose when you're just working as you as an individual, but then you as a team, these are good foundations, I suppose, that have seen you through. So I suppose it's interesting also to hear about your curveballs that have come up and how you got over them. So how do you, maybe you could talk about the next stage from going from the 1 property to 2, 3, 4 properties. How did you get on with that journey?
I just remember being at auction. I think when we did a joint venture with 2 others, and I remember being at auction, and Sabrina, who's wasn't available at the time, just then be able to come back out and go, yes, we bought a house. Oh, and we bought a hotel. Oh, do we have the money for it? I think so. Going from that point of not buying anything to, we should be able to make this work. Yeah.
Just rewind a little bit, Luther. Talk figures. So how much did you have to go to the next auction, and how did you get that? Because it's a big jump, right? And everyone listening is going, wait, what? You did that one little house, and now you're buying 2 properties, and one of them was a hotel. So what were the figures? And those not listening in Wales, who aren't in Wales, it's cheap here.
I think the hotel was
69,000, yeah.
And Stowe Park at this point, and that was 220 or 210.
If it was 215,
right? So you had like 300,000. So how did you get?
And to call it a hotel, it was a derelict
hotel.
An ex-weed factory.
So from the first auction, we so John, Grant, and Luther have already mentioned they had properties in their personal names. I didn't have anything, but I did have a house in my name. So what we actually did was transferred Luther and Grant's properties into the company to help generate some income there. And I was selling my house to move in with my now husband. So I put some of the money that I got from that into the company as well. And then we met Wayne Farmer, who is in another group. He's in Igloo. He wasn't at the time, was he? He was just on Facebook. I can't remember.
We were just connected on Facebook. Yeah. I don't even know. Yeah.
He was, and he had a house in Newport that he just finished doing up, and he was looking to sell. And that's Manchester Street, and I think he was selling it for about 130,000, was it? Something like that.
Isn't it? Yeah.
134, yeah. And he had the figures on it and what it would look to rent for as a HMO. So it's a 4-bed HMO. And we were going to buy it. We ended up buying it with a mortgage, but to start with, we were looking at doing it as an Airbnb rather than a HMO. So we went through.
It didn't have a license. It didn't have a license.
Didn't have a HMO license, so we had to go and get the license. And there were certain requirements for that, like having fire doors in there, and we had to do a little bit of work to kind of get it ready. And it took us a long time. I think it took us quite a few months to sort out this arrangement with Wayne and get round to sorting out the mortgage and everything. So that was, I think we were talking about it in January or February of 2019, and we didn't actually complete on the mortgage until September.
Yeah.
So that's just how long
Wayne got a little bit frustrated.
Got very
Shout out to Wayne. If you want to hear more from Wayne, he's in the Igloo podcast with Tanya as well.
And I think that's a general consensus. Doing the property stuff, we've done it as a limited company as opposed to doing individual, which I think made the lenders a bit more obscure in terms of who you could go to, which just in turn then makes borrowing just seems to take a lot longer in terms of doing a mortgage. Hence, not doing it like a personal mortgage where it's 2-3 months. Yeah, these were taking up to 6, 7, 8 months.
It still takes time now,
It
right?
is.
So the property one of the last HMO that we bought in Swansea has taken us, we bought it at cash at auction, and it's taken us 8 weeks to complete with the solicitor and the lender who's appointed by the lender to do it. And we're just, and all the other stuff in between. So we finished it in March. I started renting it out in March, and it's taken till 2 weeks ago for it to, even last week, wasn't it? Last week. To complete, for the mortgage to come through, right? So it's, lenders wanted 5 working days clear to transfer the funds. So it's as though that's another week. And a bank holiday in between.
Just for those that are listening that are very fresh into this sort of stuff, what does a HMO stand for?
It stands for a house of multiple occupancy. So it's 3 or more people that are unrelated living together.
And it seems like a popular thing to go for in this day and age.
Yeah, in the right areas. So a single let you're probably looking at. So our single let's a 525, for example, for the Carn Street one that we've given the example of earlier on in Pentra. And whereas we're getting on average about 475 per room in our HMOs. So times that by 4, and we have one with 7 rooms in it, slightly higher prices as well. So it generates more within one building. So it's the same roof, it's the same boiler, it's the same 4 walls and a roof. Yeah, same mortgage, but you've only got one set of maintenance, some individual maintenance within some of the rooms, but it's cheaper I have it as a cheaper way of having a property, and it generates more.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so from those types of properties,
we did change our strategy from single lets into what Luther's talking about when we tried to do a flip. So we did a flip. Sorry, we didn't try. We were like, well, we've got a couple of single lets. We bought the one at auction. We had 2 others from Luther and Grant in, and we've just bought the Manchester Street house. So we said, oh well, let's have another look at a different aspect and do a refurbishment and flip the property. So we chose.
And that means again.
Yeah, so it means we bought it at auction, we did it out, and then we just sold it on.
Yeah, good. It's a big thing, jargon busting, isn't it, in this dynamic?
Yeah.
But everybody's coming new to it, needs to know these things. Okay, so moving on and on the journey, how you get into more and more properties, but also
a little bit Alex. First, just before they go, like kind of what happened was that I had another JV group with Fran and Kerry. Shout out to Fran and Kerry, and they were, because there was 2 of them. Kerry was in London, Fran was in Bristol. They couldn't get a lot of traction because there was only 2 of them, and their locations didn't really work. And they had raised money. They had money between them. So they were in a very different situation to these guys, where for these guys, it was like 50 quid starting out a month was a lot. For those guys, like chucking 500 quid in a month was no problem, but they had no time and no way of getting any traction. So I think it's important to note that everyone's got different restraints. And when you then put people together, it can free stuff up. So that's when Kerry and Fran had their own JV, which we were going, how do we actually get this to work? So we had a JV. So the 2 groups worked together on these 2 properties in auction. So there was effectively then 6 people together, which was a whole nother dynamic to manage. These guys are kind of like, they've been in it now for a few years. They know what they're doing. Fran and Kerry are very new. They're bringing different in location-wise. They're not local, which was actually, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that was what gave you the ability to basically go with a substantial amount of money. And it's the experience and the practice and the knowledge that then allows people who haven't got money to be confident enough to work with other people's money without it being so scary. To note that the more it's more more investment effectively you guys are gathering, right? So Luther, you've got a friend who's an investor as well. And we're not, you know, some grand, but sometimes it's 100 grand. And the thing for these guys, and I think it's really important for people to understand, is that they've got stickability and they stayed around and they kept going. And when people see other people doing that, it builds trust. So these guys didn't go out and raise £300,000 worth of investment on day one. And if they'd have tried, people have been like, don't know, haven't seen you even do one property yet. Because they put their own money where their mouth was and scraped together even 50 quid a month. And Luther put the money that he had in. And people watched what they did and watched that it was working and watched that they stayed around, especially when it was tough. And when it was tough, especially when it was tough, they stayed the course. That's what got them to this point of actually, you know, how do you go from scraping together 40 grand to suddenly having 300 grand? It's staying around long enough and doing the hard shit that no one wants to do in the beginning that then gives traction. And it's important to, Grant's like, no. Talk to that, Grant. Why are you like, no? Are you being?
So I get what we haven't mentioned is those two deals were nearly put us in a hole.
Well, that's where I want you to go next.
Yeah,
that's why I wanted to stay there before moving on. So talk into that about what happened then.
So I'm not the figures person, but the refurb was.
Well, even before that, Sabrina was away on holiday. We said, yeah, we got enough money. Sabrina came to buy the two, so we bought the two. I'm in Aldi's at the checkout, and Luther's bidding. We're all on the phone to each other, apart from Sabrina because she's away.
I was at Nana's house with terrible signal, wondering what the hell was going on.
We were like, yeah, I'm sure Sabrina said we had enough money. Sabrina comes back off holiday. We're like, oh, guys, we're 20 grand short. We don't have enough money at all. So didn't even get
and to top in there, then after we bought the Stowe Park and approached by Homes Under the Hammer as well, who wanted to do the property in terms of filming it, which was another added into.
And you said yes, Luther.
Yes, I did.
Because you couldn't say no. So everyone else was like, no, I'm not. I'll Homes Under the Hammer. So if you want to see it, you can probably find it.
It's on YouTube, I think. I forget the episode number. I was at first I was embarrassed by it, and then after watching it, I was like, this is not that bad.
We'll put the links in the YouTube version of this. If anyone wants to find it, it'll be on the YouTube channel on this episode. We'll link it in.
So I guess to give you a bit of like order and a bit of a timeline. So we bought our first one, which was Carn Street in 2018. Then 2019, early on, John and Luther put their properties in. And then we did Manchester Street at the end of 2019, in which Grant had to get a loan as well, which we forgot about in order to pay the deposit on Manchester Street for the mortgage, which I think we're still paying today, actually, paying off that loan. And then, Kerry and Fran teamed up with us late 2019 for JV. And then the auction the auction of 2020 in June happened then while I was away. I think it was at a powerlifting competition. That was the year I got engaged. Yeah, so I was in Sweden. That was like my 30th.
We had a private investor as well for us.
Laura.
Deals.
Yeah. So Laura was a friend of mine, actually, a friend of my friend Casey. And I had a conversation with her about how we were looking for money, and she's a plumber. And she had some cash from inheritance that she was looking to do something with. So I mentioned about what we were doing and the return on it potentially for her. So we ended up offering her, I think it was 5% return on her investment. And she came back and said, no, she wanted 6%. So we had a conversation about that and decided that was okay. And we would go ahead and with the loan from her. And then I put her in touch with Luther, which is how, because Luther's a tiler and she's a plumber. So that's how they've become closer over the past few years as well. So we ended up with Kerry and Fran's money and working with Kerry and Fran, and then Laura's investment as well. So that's how we ended up with like the 300,000 available to go to auction in 2020.
And she's still an investor to this day.
And she's still an investor. We're still like, so we've built up that trust with her.
Even though, tell us what happened with the 2 deals. with the hotel and with Stowe Park.
That was brilliant.
It's not all peachy, folks. This is what happened next.
I think,
Yeah.
COVID happened as well, right? COVID happened during the deal.
I think then was the net result was like -5 overall, or 5 or -10, but it was -5 each, wasn't it? No?
We lost 20 grand. Yeah, we lost 20 grand.
And
Well, the
time.
experience.
And it took us
Didn't sell
a
until
year,
June
year and a bit.
2021.
Yeah.
So what about outgoings and things like that? Were there things to be paying for when no money's coming in? You know, talk about the parameters of who's taking what burden.
So we paid for, this is the time as well that I was contracting in IT, and these guys said, well, we'd rather have somebody that we know manage or be on site to help stand in our best interest while the work's going on. So I then started labouring and project managing the refurb. We did all the refurb work together in terms of what we said we would, and a budget. Our budget was about 80 grand off in the end. We had to insulate the external walls of the property from a building control point of view, so it had extra cost in. And there was a couple of unforeseen things that we didn't know about, and that cost us a little bit extra money as well. And then the time it took, so obviously we said it completed in June 2021. We had to deal with COVID and everything shutting down in the March of 21 as well, before the job was finished, before the project was finished. I skipped ahead slightly because we decided that the hotel wasn't a good deal for us. So we sold the hotel back in auction in December 2020, going into 21. On the hotel itself, we made £5,000 profit after, because we bought it, sold it for more.
We did do a replan though in order to sell, didn't we?
Yeah, just talk about what you did and what it costs.
Yeah, so it had planning permission already, but for 3-bedroom flats, and we looked at 6 3-bedroom flats. But we looked at the area in Porth. It's in Porth, and we were like, "Who wants 3-bedroom flats?" You know, as in it's not a normal market for flats. It's normally 2 or 1-bedroom flats. So we worked with an architect to reapply for planning permission to create 9 2-bedroom flats. Yeah, that was right, wasn't it? 9 2-bedroom flats. And it passed planning, and then we sold it with that planning on it instead.
That was the out plan. The out plan was we were going to refurb.
We were going to keep it, yeah. Yes, that's true. And the reason we sold it, we were looking at the figures, and we were getting prices in. Once planning had passed, we were looking at how much it's going to cost us. We went to some main contractors to do it, because it's 9 flats is something massive that we hadn't done before. We've gone from a couple of singlets, a HMO, which was already refurbished, and then the flip at Stowe Park, which is like one of the ones we bought beforehand. We knew what we were doing there, but this was something 9 different flats with communal areas over a massive sized building. We had to have a bat survey, which took longer than expected because it was too cold in the August when they were going to do it. We had to deal with everything else that's the ceiling Alex is talking about. It was totally different and new to us as well. And we were getting prices back around £700,000 for the work to be done back in 2020 for this block of flats. And we worked out, to the best of our knowledge at the time, what the flats were going to be worth when we were selling them, and we were always going to end up leaving much more money in than we wanted to, and we could afford to. So we also looked at it at, if we've got that much money, then it would work better in a different deal, and not tying it all up into this property because it's going to take so long for us to get it out. So we then decided to put it back into the auction, with the additional plan and all the surveys and everything else done. And we sold it for more than we bought it for in the end, and covered our costs in terms of the architect's fees and all the planning and the bat survey fees. So yeah, we offloaded it, and I think it still sits empty today. So I'm not sure what. Well, it was last month when I went over, but.
Interesting.
Well, and it speaks into. Sorry, go on.
No, this is like it's the dynamics of it all, isn't it? It hasn't gone all rosy. You know, you've had to really come together and think about, is this the right business decision? And to, you know, say goodbye to stuff can sometimes be painful.
Yeah, because when we bought it, it was £49,000, and we were like, oh, we'll spend about 300,000 on it, and it'll be worth $500,000. Get all our money back out, and we'll have a cash flowing property of 9 flats of £400 a month. Brilliant. You know, but in reality, or the things that we learned afterwards and the things from Stowe Park were different. And then one of the reasons Stowe Park cost us a loss was because if we look back, it was empty and we couldn't sell it. Again, that process of selling at the time and with COVID. So we had costs of the financial cost that we had for the money that we borrowed. The building had been empty for 21 years. So the exemption on the council tax had already been utilised by the council themselves in the past. We couldn't get an exemption on it. So we were paying insurance, council tax and investors fees every month. And it was just sitting empty because the deal wasn't going through we had buyers interested. We did change estate agent as well halfway through. But we did manage to sell it back in June the 1st. Not for as much as we wanted, but it stopped us losing money, and it stopped us costing each month outgoing rather than not generating anything at all.
And just so people understand who are listening, in real terms, for every 100,000 these guys are borrowing, it's costing them 5,000 a year. So when you're borrowing 300,000, that's 15,000 a year just in interest costs alone, before you then add on the council tax and the other bills. When you overrun on a project, you're paying for labour as you're overrunning. It runs into thousands of pounds a month. And when you then deal with the property not valuing up as much as we thought it would, the costs being higher, very quickly it's easy for a project to turn into what we initially thought was, ooh, this is going to be great. I can't remember what we thought initially you would make, 50 grand, 100 grand. On the flip, it turns into actually we're mitigating losses, and every month that goes by, it's costing more and more. And I think that's not talked about enough in the property world. I don't think people discuss it enough. I think it happens lots more than the property people would have you know. And what's also not talked about in Wales is everyone goes, oh, it's great, the properties are so cheap. That's great when you're buying, but if you're trying to refurbish, the cost of the refurbishment often costs more than the end value of the property, which is what John was alluding to with the Teenyouth Hotel, is that we don't have what's called the gross development value at the end. Whereas if you took that same project and plonked it somewhere in the south of England, you could multiply those figures up and you could make hundreds and hundreds of thousands on that deal. Same property, same building cost, higher purchase cost, sure, maybe a bit of a higher labour cost, but the end value would be much higher. So there's a downside in Wales that we don't have high property prices, because often the build cost will be more than the property's worth. And even if you look at the insurance, and you guys have experienced this, right? The rebuild cost will be 2 or 3 times the value of the property. So as well. And again, there's a big downside to all of that. They're like, oh, it'll be easy, and we'll take what property people are doing in London and we'll try and do it in Wales. And it just doesn't work. So you have to know your area and do the due diligence. And the good thing that these guys were doing is I have it in my head that it was like £15,000 worth of fees for surveys and checking things out, and experts, architects, all of this stuff to really figure it out. And it doesn't always go the way we think it will. That was, in my head, 2 years of time for all 6 of you, plus me, plus, you guys would pay, you guys pay me as well to facilitate and coach you. Luther.
So I would say that there were other bits and pieces in there that sort of small things that cropped up and picked up. And one of the things we looked at initially was we could do a HMO. There was a HMO next door, but the particular council, in order to get those sorts of licenses, it wasn't going to be feasible. So we decided to do a nice family home. But in order to sort of make the kitchen a lot bigger, meant knocking down a wall, which in turn then building control said, right, now you need to dig up the entire kitchen floor. But if we'd left it, it would have looked crap. So we didn't really, and then we just, all those little bits, 100 mil installation throughout, putting in nice doors to make it a nice home. Then you get COVID. All of a sudden, everyone wants garage, study, nice big garden. We have small garden, no drive. And then you're trying to sell it to that market. So that's pushing the price back down. And all those bits to then end up with an end result of losing 20,000. But you've paid all your investors back. They've earned off the back of the 2 years. You've got the experience. In the grand scheme, 20,000 sounds like a lot of money. And it is. But also in that particular scenario, to come out of that and come to the back, it's a brilliant scenario to sort of walk away with all that learning, all that experience. We've still got that investor there. We've got, obviously, if you do happen to watch the instance on Homes Under the Hammer, the figures are incorrect. So obviously that point, which was brought up, wasn't fully aware of the figures at the time completely. I think I hadn't included all the interest payments and wanted to look good on TV. For obvious reasons, but all that experience that we now have moving forward to the next one, for 2 years, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Thank you for owning that, Luther, because that's the other thing that people don't see, right? That's what it takes, and we have to deal with ourselves and what it feels like, and that's a big deal being on TV when actually the deal's not going right, but we're still trying to kind of hope that it is, and then actually it's not. It's it's a huge learning journey. It really is, and you're still here. And when you start to talk about the deal you're doing now, everyone will understand why that 20 grand loss was the best thing that ever happened to you, the experience you gained and all the rest of it. And it also meant that actually Kerry and Fran didn't carry on. That's important to know. Working with me is not some magic bullet that you'll get financially free and it'll all be peachy. You guys then stopped JVing together. And again, nothing wrong. It just wasn't. I said to you guys, it's all in, or you don't do it. And it wasn't. It just wasn't going to be all in for all 6 of you into one company. And then actually, Kerry had a premature baby and there. So that JV actually no longer exists. And I think it's really important for me to share that, because a lot of our industry, to put it badly, doesn't say about the failures and the fuck ups and the things that didn't work and the people that are no longer on the journey to financial freedom. I could always put you guys forward like, look, come work with me. This is guaranteed to happen. It's not true. I've got just as many groups not continuing as I've got groups continuing. And it's important to note that. And again, there's nothing wrong. We're still, in touch with Fran and Kerry. Fran organised the kayaking event for the community in the spring. She's still very much involved. She's still investing with you guys. It's like the relationships are there, but they change. Yeah. So she's still part of you, but in a different way. There's no quick fix. There's no easy journey. And the stickability, what it takes is huge. So well done again to you guys for what you've done. Even in the perceived failure, it's huge.
So where are we progressing to? Where are we in your journey now? Are we halfway through the 5 years?
We're pretty much back up towards the end of 2021. We bought, we decided in an auction that a HMO in Swansea didn't sell. I was watching the auction and then I said to the guys, oh, look, this didn't sell. It's a HMO. We wanted so our strategy after the hotel in the Stowe Park, we said we wanted to look at more HMOs based on the knowledge we just had. Our money would work better for us in a HMO, house multiple occupancy, where it costs us less to run in terms of one roof, not multiple roofs, and it generates more rent. So we were watching an auction at Christmas time. There's a property in Swansea didn't sell. So I messaged the following day, and then we ended up buying that one at the beginning of January of 2021.
21, yeah.
21, yeah.
That was just after T Nerve had sold, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And to add in, this just now speaks to the confidence level these guys had. Because correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't know you were buying it, and I knew after the fact that you bought it, right?
Yeah.
So
we went from meeting with us as a group structure changed behind the scenes. So we used to meet on a Tuesday night for an hour at the beginning. Every Tuesday we'd run through anything that we had to deal with. And then we'd meet with Alex, and then we didn't do anything else. And we started progressing to a Friday and other meetings, and we've also got a WhatsApp group that we work with as well. And it was in there. I posted it in. We were like, yeah, let's buy it. And then I think 2 or 3 days later at a Friday meeting, we were trying to haggle on the price, and with Luther, me going, yeah, let's just buy it for that. Luther's like, no, go 1,000 less. And we did get it for 1,000 less in the end. And then we just messaged into Alex going, oh, by the way, we just bought this. So,
if I remember, just sort of a guide around the property, it already had a license for 5 people.
Yeah.
It had a bathroom and a single toilet that were all on like Saniflow that had been put into the front room. So we knew when we were buying it, it was a bit, but the money stacked in terms of the rental income if it was full. But then I think
at that time since we have a standard that we've agreed that we want to do for our tenants, and what we think is acceptable. So yes, that house had a shower that was cracked and everything else. So we looked at, and Luther suggested turning one of the other rooms into 2 showers to make it a better standard of living, even drop in a room so we didn't get as much rent. But the tenants it was a shower per 2 people rather than a shower for 5, because we wouldn't want to live in an environment like that, we said, and we wanted to make it stand for a better experience for the tenants who it's their home, right? Yes, they've just got a room and an area and a kitchen to use, but it's still their home and where they live for however long period of time that they want to live there. So we wanted to make it nice, and that's the standard. Luther was saying about them. We converted one of the other rooms into a toilet and a bathroom. A shower room and a bathroom.
And then split the old bathroom back and made one of the bedrooms bigger, so it was a lot larger in terms of bedroom size. And then had a flood whilst the works were happening, and then had to claim on insurance, and then had to go through doing all that as well. Which makes it sound like a lot, but it was worth it. We dropped it down to what, four bed, and what's the rental income on that in terms of?
It rents for like 1,750 a month.
So 1,750, and we bought it for 96. Was it 96 or 97?
94,000 in the end. We got it for, and then we mortgaged it out at the start of this year, I think.
Yeah.
At 130,000. Yeah. So.
And I'm pretty much sure that most of the works were all almost, if not close to, covered by the insurance payer in the end.
Yeah.
Close to.
Yeah, so it doesn't go as planned, right?
Right? You had to fight with the insurance company. Like, to be really clear, the leak happened because of something to do. I can't remember what happened. There was a huge
basically, they were putting new pipework in for the new bathroom, but obviously, whilst we're doing the new bathroom, the tenants still had to have a working bathroom, so they still had to leave the original sort of bathroom running. So whilst we were doing the works, they'd run all this new pipe work, and then they reconnected everything to the new soil stack. However, what they hadn't done is connected both Saniflows. So one of the Saniflows they thought was just redundant, just bung stopped it, which meant then all this was being pumped up into the ceiling and across and kept filling the pipe until eventually the pipe bung blew out and flooded the new bathrooms and came through into the kitchen. You had sort of coming through the kitchen ceiling and extractor hood, which meant obviously then there was a lot of work that needed to be done. It wasn't a case of just giving it a quick spray with Dettol.
And this is the learning that we had of the mortgage company having the value of the property much higher than what we had originally insured it for. So
the insurance company,
because we bought the property at cash. From the mortgage, we went with the mortgage valuation and upped it a little bit, whereas the insurance company was saying it should be 3 times the price that we've insured it for. So they wanted to take money off, so we wouldn't get as much money back in terms of the insurance claim that we have. But yeah, so when we've remortgaged our properties now, we have the figure that we use from the valuation company that have done the mortgage. We use that figure as our rebuild costs for our insurance. It's one of those questions for the insurance point of view is like, how many miles a year do you drive? It's don't really know. Unless you track it, unless you look or are aware of it. It's the same as how much you think the house is worth to rebuild it. And all our experience is like, well, we don't build houses. What would you say? And they want a figure from you. So it's
and then they'll come back and bat you on it and go, well, actually, no, we're not going to pay you the VAT because you could use workers that aren't VAT registered. Well, hang on a second, that doesn't necessarily work. If you're going to get a main contractor, they might be VAT registered, so they will bat you back.
Yeah. But we got the money and it's rented. One of the rooms has just become available again, so we're booking in appointments for the end of this week and next week to get it back rented.
So yeah, there's quite a lot of responsibilities and different departments to manage, isn't there, between also running your own businesses? I mean, you know, how do you dedicate your time now that your property portfolio is building?
We actually spend probably not a lot of time together. Maybe we spend about 3 hours a week together. I'm a little bit less at the moment. And an hour with Alexlouise on a regular basis on a Tuesday call. And then we spend 3 hours on a Friday together to try and organise everything. And then in the meantime, we manage things via WhatsApp. We've each got kind of, I guess, different roles and responsibilities within the business as well. So John, by nature of his new business, a maintenance and management company, does a lot of he does our maintenance and manages the properties. I do more of the financial stuff and take care of like money and saying, what, we can't spend that much. That's probably like, stop spending money. You know, Luther does a lot of the work with tiling and bathrooms and sourcing stuff for us. Yeah. And it's just so we've each kind of like delegated stuff a lot.
And with all the projects that we do, Grant and Sabrina work quite closely
Grant
together.
Works on the design with it. Yeah, Grant is massively like all about the visuals and stuff. So yeah.
And then you've got 6 hours a month with me as well at mine. So you dedicate a whole Friday once a month as well, right? Plus the 3 hours on the other. But it's still side hustle, actively, although it's becoming a big business. It's becoming a big side hustle.
Yeah, so I suppose, you know, where we're at now between the past 2 years, what's the, you know, the dynamics looking like, and also your future plans for the group?
Yeah, so we bought one other HMO whilst trying to buy a company at the same time. So we bought another HMO in Swansea that was again at auction, which is the one we just said we just remortgaged out back end of last year. I think it was back end of last year, wasn't it? Because it happened at the same time as the flood in the other property.
So September, I think.
Yeah, September. So we bought a property, Tanya, that we were going to refurbish out. And what ended up happening, because we had the flood in the other property, was we had to temporarily rehome the 2 tenants that were in our now soil infested property into the other property that we were just about to start a refurb on to get the work done. So we didn't actually so that house was sitting there costing us money in one sense because we couldn't get any extra rent from it, and we weren't actually refurbishing it at the time. So we had to get the work done and back in the kitchen and the bathrooms reorganized and sorted out for them to move back into the property. And that was completed in the January. And we filled it in January of this year with the 4 new tenants. The one existing tenant left and one existing tenant stayed and came back. And then we refurbished that out. We added to so it was a license for 8 people HMO. So 8 people could live there, but it's 7 bedrooms. So one of the rooms was classed as a couple's room. And we, again, with our new stance of wanted to create a better environment for the tenants, we decided that Luther had the vision of putting en-suites into 4 of the larger rooms because the space and sizing requirements worked for us to allow us to do that. So there are a lot of regulations from the councils regarding HMO and what you can and what you can't do. So the sizing of the rooms worked, so we were able to put 4 ensuite shower rooms in, and then there was 2 bathrooms in the property originally, and we just created those into one larger bath and shower room together with a toilet. So for the 3 of the rooms that didn't have a ensuite in, they could share one bathroom between 3 people. And that's been fully rented since April. and we remortgaged it back out then. So I'm not sure of the figures on this one, to be honest with you.
The 280 purchase price.
Yeah, we bought it for 280. Mortgage just come out 350. It was valued up at, and we spent about 80 grand on it, so a little bit in. And then it rents for about 3,500 a month.
Yeah, bigger projects now, isn't it? And
Yeah.
so you've got presently what's going on?
Yeah. Grant's laughing.
Come on,
Bigger
Grant.
project is the yeah.
So I knew of a person that was selling their portfolio of 3 blocks of flats down here back in 2019. She's a very keen runner. Does a lot of long distance stuff, as in running across Australia, running 50 marathons in 50 days. More stuff than I do. And they lived in England, and they had a property portfolio down here. And with COVID, and just before COVID, they wanted to sell it because it was the distance traveling and everything else coming back down to manage it they were finding it a little bit difficult. So we bought a company. So SSLGJ then bought this company that has 3 blocks of flats.
How many flats, John?
So there's 3 blocks of flats and 31 units across all 3. One of the blocks is currently empty, so we're going to refurbish the whole block of 11 flats out. And then there's 3 in another block that we're refurbishing at the present time, and then 2 in another block that are started as well in that sense for a refurbishment. So by beginning of next year, I think it's April, isn't it? Our plan is to have the other 5 empty flats at the minute rented. So the 2 blocks are fully rented and tenanted, and then the other big empty block of 11 flats, work would have already started on that to refurbish that, to get that up and running as well.
Wow. Is there any point where you just go, how many more properties can we deal with? Or is it just more?
Yeah, I mean, overnight we went from something like we had 15 or 16 tenants, including the individual people living in the individual HMO rooms, to like 50 tenants. So once we bought the company back in April, on the 1st of April, this year. So,
and in terms of what we can deal with at the moment, part of the reasons why we've got to sort of stage how we're doing things, the way the company was run prior, some like mortgages coming to an end. So one of the blocks that we're doing, we've got 3 empty ones. We're doing those now because the mortgage for $500,000 is due up in December. So we need to get that done, to get that remortgaged, and then focus on 2 others, to then focus on the remaining one. So I think, there's also about how much can we actually take on. If there was a HMO that popped up now, I don't think we'd probably choose not to do it at this moment in time. There might be a small conversation around it, but in general, this is quite a big deal. We'll get this over the line sorted, and then look at what is next. What we got the appetite for? Where are we at? What's our revisit it?
To mention, like the reason that John had the opportunity to find out about this deal, and then and us to get it over the line. So it took a lot of work. It was quite convoluted in the way it was structured, and really the properties weren't working. In fact, one has a prohibition order on it, so it's totally empty, and it's the largest of 3. So we've taken on a lot of problems, and as a team, we can see that we have the opportunity to right those, but it's going to take. It is taking effort, isn't it, John? You're on the ground, feet on the ground there daily, and
effort, time, but
a negative cash flow. I think that's it's really important to say. There's a few things just to add in for people listening. So they bought the company because once you own property, you can buy the whole company. So you're not actually buying properties, you're buying a company that owns properties. So you're not buying in the same way, you're not dealing in the same way with financing, stamp duty, and all the rest of it. And what there is to say about the property company, unfortunately, fortunately, there's 2 sides to this. Guys, how much money did you put down to buy 31 flats?
We put 60k down, roughly.
£60,000.
£60,000, and we bought about £1 million worth of debt plus £30,000 of outstanding arrears and about £3,000 a month negative cash flow loss.
Great. That's the full story. That's what these guys did. So it's tempting to go, they bought 31 properties for 60 grand. And then there's what they actually bought, which is a lot of debt. It's highly leveraged property, to the point where if those properties had been sold off individually, that those people would have potentially gone bankrupt or made a loss. They got out, luckily, just at the right time. And this was deteriorating so fast because things were taking so long. So more and more flats were becoming empty. The negative cash flow was going up. So it was like, instead of £1,000 a month negative, it's 2 and 3. Because these guys had an existing portfolio, that is now covering the negative amount that these other properties are costing on a monthly basis, plus obviously raising investment to spend on all of these properties. So they bought themselves negative cash flow and a big bill for refurbishment and a lot of problems. And when it's finished, it will be amazing. And what it takes is a lot of guts. I was going to say a big pair of balls, but I don't feel like you can say that in 2022. So it takes a lot of guts to do that, to take on those problems, and also not to shout about the greatness of 31 years for 60 grand without the other side of like what these guys literally just took on is phenomenal.
So it's gone.
I was going to say, is it worth also noting that when we started this off, we were talking about putting £50 a month in. Where we're at now, we've been putting £750 a month in from our personal. But our last conversation now is from October. And it's from October, isn't it? That we're dropping next month. We're actually dropping it down to £250 a month, with the view then that we're going to revisit that conversation once. I can't remember which point.
Our year end.
Our year end. We're going to revisit it with the intention of stopping that. And that was just, I think, from a choice of what we could achieve and do with that. So getting from that point of being like £50, it's like a really hard conversation to put stuff in. Now we're at £750, and yet still
putting in individually, right? That's just for everyone listening. They used to put in £50 a month, and that was a struggle. And when I used to talk to them about rising it, they'd look at me like I'd just, I don't know, killed their parents or something, or their children, worse. And then now individually on a monthly basis, they put £750 a month in. And that's the growth story. And they're putting it in, they're taking nothing out. So they have worked now for 5 years, taking no cash out. And this is a very big journey called delayed gratification. So for anyone who likes having everything now, this is the opposite. And what it will do and Luther's like me, I like having everything now, right? And what it will do once let's fast forward a year or two from now, and all the properties are done, and these guys do take out the £2,000 a month each, that will then be there. Is that fair, Sabrina? Will it be somewhere around that?
Yeah. So once we've done all the properties in Kippertie, we will be able to hit that, what we'd originally set out to do. Let's get £2,000.
And for the rest of their lives. And that's a lot of money. £2,000 per person per month. That's 24 grand each a year. I'm like, where's my calculator? For the rest of their lives. So in a decade, that's £240,000 each. So you can keep doing the math. Over 40 years, that's £1 million. And that's because these guys spent 5 years working really freaking hard and putting everything into it and being challenged and overcoming differences. And that's the payday. And most people never want to wait for that payday. Most people want to take money now. And because these guys did 5 years, just 5 years, they will get hundreds of thousands over the rest of their lifetimes out. And that's if they do nothing else. That's if they just stopped after this deal. That's not to mention what's possible in the escalation of the journey.
Yeah, so I suppose it's also asking questions like, who else does this affect? Because some of you have partners or married and families, and there's all those types of conversations go on behind the scenes. Also, something I've always kind of talked about is when you make a decision, can you cope with the worst case scenario? What is that worst case scenario for people like yourselves? yeah, so two key elements there, you know, who else is involved in all these decisions and how it affects you and your family, and then what is your worst case scenario and how do you deal with those?
I'm probably not the right person to ask about worst case scenario, because I'm the person that will sail very close to the wind in terms of I'm the gambler of the group, so I'm the one that's going to push that boundary and see what we can get away with, and that's where, you know, as a team it really balances out in terms of being able to rein in and go, no, Luther, we think that's a bit excessive, or actually we could potentially go to this because we hadn't thought of this, which you don't necessarily have as an individual when you're batting against something. You see something, generally speaking, if I want to go and do something, so let's say I wanted to go to Tomorrowland this year and I decided I'm just going to go. I wasn't looking for someone else to tell me what I can and can't do. And therefore it was just a case, it was a choice. But it might have been that as a group, when you're looking at doing something, you do have a lot more of a benefit to other people's inputs and ideas about doing those things, which is very valuable and very helpful. And I even find that in my own business, even though I'm the sole director, that actually inputs from the staff and from the team actually go a long way to thinking, oh, I don't have to do all this myself. From that question.
I guess the worst case scenario is that we lose everything, is that we can't afford to pay our bills. We lose our rental, our mortgages become too high, and we lose everything. But the beauty of having things in a limited company is that you only lose the money you put in. So we only lose the money that we've invested. We've still got our businesses and our personal incomes and everything else that goes with it. So, you know, although it seems catastrophic to lose all of that and all the work that we put in, it's not the end of the line. And we could, with the skills and the journey that we've had, we could start again, you know. And
there are those points that even though it is in a limited company, that we are personally guaranteeing the money as well in some instances. So there is that.
Yeah.
But there's still equity in these properties.
That's the other thing, you know, even if we had to sell everything in Kiptai, it still cover all the outstanding loans that we've got against it. So yeah.
Yeah, is there any other questions, you know, that you think that you had 5 years ago that you're like, why was I even worrying? It's just different, bigger challenges now, I guess.
I think the challenges are much the same, just on a bigger scale, like with time and money, like everything. I said, I don't want to create the story of, but I will. Overruns. Like we always plan for stuff and then it goes on longer than we expect it to. We always have a certain budget. It costs more than we expect it to. So yeah, and it's just, I don't know, we always manage to it always works out in the end.
Yeah, even with, you know, the way the economy's going now as well, you know, we've got a lot of doom and gloom going on in the media, you know, nobody's spending money, you know, how do you counteract
I think
all that negative naysayer chat?
We always consider going into a deal like, what is the out? Like, if this doesn't work out, like what is there to lose with this? So I think that's an important part of deciding what you go for and what you don't. And with everything coming up, I think with the deals that we did, at the start we kind of tested them against, like, if mortgage rates went up to 5%, 5.5%, would we still be able to cover the mortgage with our rental? And that's kind of like the stress test that we did at the start, and made sure that our rent would cover it.
And it's difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen with the market and when it's going to happen with the market. You know, something's going to happen, but what the impact will be. And then there's the consideration of going, well, actually, if interest rates do go up and it makes it harder to buy a house, the likelihood is the rental income will go up. So one will potentially balance the other. So as long as we're not sailing so close that we're maxing everything physically possible, I think we discussed it when we do the mortgages on the next ones, that we're going to try and reduce the percentage loan to value rate and try and fix in for longer potentially, so that we're not as heavily leveraged should there be, you know, a crash or something that brings those property values down, because they'll still rent, because there'll always be a need for housing. It just depends on what value and how well positioned we are as a company to be able to combat a negative slide or anything that happens. But for the time being, I think it's just a case of focusing on what we've got. What Alex said earlier about what we've achieved so far. There are other things that when I look at that, going, yes, we have achieved quite a lot. And it's not to say that we've done amazingly superb at where we've got to. There's probably things that we could have done or could have done differently that would have got us there quicker. So it's not all been plain sailing and just, oh, here we go, we did all this, and look, we've got to this value, and look how amazing that was. And it was a lot of hard work, and we worked 40 hours a day, and it's not been a case of that. There has been, you could look at it. It is achievable for those that want to do it in a shorter time frame, and it's not as hard as it seems. And yes, I think we could have done more if we look back as well.
Is there anything missing in your dynamic? If you had a magic wand and you could make something happen, not money investment, but
I was just about to say that. Anyone who's got money and wants to invest.
No, anybody. Yeah. So, what if someone's thinking of joining forces with people, what skill sets are missing, if any?
We realised, I think, when we did the JV side of things, and what didn't work was the proximity and how the dynamics worked. We'd already established quite a good base for what we'd done as a group between the four of us, having different skill sets and abilities, and certain things work quite well. If you're two individuals that just want to put money in, and you haven't got necessarily the time, or you're too far away to deal with the property, if you're going to do it with someone, you kind of need someone who's able to go to the property or has a bit more hands-on knowledge, in my opinion, or you choose to invest in someone else that's going to do that for you. So it's about finding the right type of investment for you. If you're really hands-on and really enjoy doing that sort of thing and have got that grip, then great. Then you might just be a case if you're the person short of the money who needs the person that has a full-time job that is 20 miles away. No, that's probably longer than that, 100 miles away. And therefore that would be a good team if you're the person on the ground. So I think that was the one thing we found with the other stuff, is that then when we decided that actually we don't want to merge with Fran and Kerry at this point, was because we had enough of a dynamic, and actually it was just about going to town. And what we needed was financial support. We had the skill set, we just didn't have the finances. And then we had the finances conveniently.
And I think we've evolved really from where we were. I was a personal trainer, John was in IT. So we've kind of evolved into roles that were to fill a gap that was needed and things that we enjoyed. Like John enjoyed doing the maintenance and project management side of things. So he created a company that does that. And I enjoyed doing the financial side of things. So I've now got the skills to be able to do that, like accountancy and bookkeeping. And so I think that's just how we've kind of solved the issue of if we've missed a gap or someone needs a skill, that we've just kind of moved into what we enjoy and made it our thing. Yeah.
Like I'm buying skirting and architraves in the hopes of using it in the next.
Yeah, John's now our source.
Which is still running at the moment. I'm like, ooh. My skill sets in the tiling and bathroom industry, but also like on the side now, it's like, oh, I get to run an auction, be on a podcast. I wouldn't have seen that 5 years ago.
So as we wrap up, is there anything that you would have done differently, knowing what you know now?
Not bought to new with, just for the finance savings. No, I don't think so. I'm just looking at it purely from a monetized point of view. I think everything's a learning curve, and it doesn't matter if we haven't had any massive losses. Yes, we didn't pan out the way we'd intended, but actually the learning, the growth from that have probably saved and grown into other areas. So I don't think changing anything is not going to do anything. What you can do is learn from it, and what are you going to do differently next time? Does it still work to do that again? So I think everything that you experience is a worthwhile experience. Sometimes a costly lesson, but a worthwhile lesson nonetheless. I mean, coming from my background, I went bankrupt at 19. It's sort of an impact to the way I'm doing money differently now. There's still some areas in which I probably no, not probably, that I can improve on. I'm not doing everything perfectly to have got to this point. But I keep learning and evolving from the experiences I've made. So I wouldn't, even if you asked me, would I go back and change having gone bankrupt at 19 and done the things I did? The answer is no. It was the best thing that ever happened, because the knowledge and information I got from doing that, which I didn't know at the time, was incredibly valuable.
Anyone else before because I'm conscious of time. Alex, do you want to bring anything in before?
I think just from speaking. Oh, can you hear me? Speaking from a coach perspective, I think it's the same for me. I've learned on this journey. I don't have all the answers. These guys aren't working with me because I know everything and their journey is going to be flawless. They work with me because I can facilitate people. And I've learned on this journey, not just with SSLGJ, but with my other groups. I have a group, a program now called Mission Mastermind, additionally to Joint Venture Mastermind, because not everyone wants to do property, but they want to evolve and have their own businesses. So I put that in place to solve a need. And this whole business, from the time when these guys did the first bit and then said, come on, keep going, has evolved because I'm open to learning and because of the journey. And when something quote unquote fails, I learn and I adapt and I change the business. So I think we all learn together. And I think once we can all accept that we're all learning and evolve and be adaptable and hustle and move and accept what happens, as Louise really put it really well, it doesn't even regret going bankrupt at 19, the learning. And as people get, and people listen to this, you don't have to come work with me. There's loads of people out there doing shit. I'm one person serve so many people at a time. And I think once finds people who are aligned and who can accept people like we accept each other, walks and all, we've gone through all sorts together, the ups and downs of life, and we still love each other. And that's the key, is that we learn and we go, and we fuck up, we go, I fucked up, we have moments, haven't we? It's not just me facilitating the group, like the group facilitates me too, and I have relationships with all of these as well. And I've grown as a coach. I joke, and it's actually it's true. It's one of my biggest growth moments. Like, pushes me and challenges me as a coach to keep growing. And my mum used to tell me that life's a journey, and it used to really piss me off. Like, no, I don't know what to do, and it's not, it's a journey, and we're all growing. And there's an invitation from life to grow all the time, and we can either accept the growth invitation, which often occurs as a breakdown or something bad happening. We can either accept it and learn from it, or we can push it away and harden ourselves and take ourselves away from people and not share and not be open. And that's the choice. And the choice for these guys here is they are continually growing. They're continually taking themselves on and each other on. And it's a joy and an inspiration to be, it's an honor to be part of their journey, and Tanya be part of your journey, and all of us to be part of the journey together. And it sounds like a big step, but it's this that creates world peace. Because if we can get on, then everyone can get on. Because people go, oh, how is there still war in the world? It's like, because people are at war, families are at war, joint venture partners are at war. And if we can do all our bit, and we can go through what we've gone through and still love each other and still hang out and still be social together and still laugh at how hilarious we all are when we're, not really getting it, then actually that's what happens. What you asked Tanya earlier was, how does this impact the wider community? All of these guys have got partners and children. I've got children. We've all got families. And to be really clear, I think the best place to wrap up is where this is going. What we're now dealing with is wealth management down through the next few generations, because what we're all building, I knew we could build some cool stuff, but I didn't know it was going to get this big, this fast for this group or any of the others. And I'm now bringing in people and starting to speak to people to deal with wealth management, trusts, How do we put this 5 years journey and this 10-year journey and this 20-year journey and all the hard work and pain and tears and laughter, how do we stop that ending when these guys die? How do we stop the properties just being sold and the money being spent by the next generation? How do we build a foundation that teaches financial education to anyone and everyone that wants it? And the key is that wants it, because not everyone actually really wants this journey. They say they do, but they don't. And to me, that is like unbelievable. And that's, again, I said it at the start, these guys were the ones that went first. Like, they're the early adopters. And that's what happens when people early adopt and go, do you know what, I'm going to give this a go. It takes us to places that are unimaginable, even to me now as a coach who sees things bigger and further and further ahead. It's magical. And if anyone listening to this can get that, that's what happens when you stay with something for a while. And these guys have only done it for 5 years. You know, we've just lost the Queen, and look what happened in her lifetime over decades when she was of service to one thing. That's what happens. It's magical. And in some ways it takes everything. And the paradox of it, it takes nothing but showing up. It's actually really simple. Just keep showing up. And it's mind-blowing to me. It's why I wanted to do this podcast, because and to really say thank you to you guys, to just go like, fuck, what have you done? What have you created? What if Grant hadn't kept saying, come on, come on, come on, which took a few months to nudge that memory from a decade ago playing the cash flow game? And that's how connected the world is. Did Robert Kiyosaki know when he created the cash flow? Shout out to Robert. You will be on my podcast one day. Does he know that his cash flow game created that idea in me, which got you guys to remember, for me to remember that and to where it's going? That's how connected this world is. And when we get that, it's magic. I could go on and gush for hours.
I know. And we're like,
how inspired I am by these guys and this journey.
It's an epic story. And I think the key thing is that every one of you are very approachable. So if there's anybody listening and want to get in contact, you know, primarily with Alex, you know, all the information and the contact details will be in the show notes. But these guys are local, all over the place, doing what they're doing well. So don't be shy and come forward if you want to find out more. But yeah, thank you, everybody. I think that was quite a smooth running podcast.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Let's wrap up and go off live. Bye, everybody.